Hey folks, welcome back to the 401k Coffee Break Podcast. So today our topic is the value of an emergency fund. Now, I know we're the investment people and we're supposed to tell you, hey, get all your money in the stock market. We're actually not supposed to tell you that. Our compliance department go nuts. But we're also supposed to kind of help you be on track for retirement, which we covered in a previous episode. And one of the best ways of keeping your 401k on track and growing the investments that you have in there is not interrupting it unnecessarily. Well, why do you have to interrupt your 401k unnecessarily? Oh, I don't know, if you run out of money, right? So that's what we want to avoid. All right, you're probably gonna hate me for showing cash in there. We'll see. We'll see if the compliance department lets me do that. All right, we'll find out. So, I know we're supposed to tell you invest, 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 but the best way of not interrupting your investments is making sure in your pocket or in your checking account or savings account or someplace readily accessible there's enough cash, right? So let's talk about what an emergency fund means by starting on what it doesn't mean, okay? So we're recording this shortly after Christmas, and so one of the things that comes up about every year, it's been coming up about every year for the last 2000 or so, is Christmas, right? And so Christmas shopping is not an emergency. It's been on the calendar for 2,000 years. That is not an emergency. Okay, if you see a car that you just cannot live without, that's just a little bit cooler than the currently fully functional car that you drive, that is not an emergency, right? If your BFF calls you up and says, hey, we really need to hit the streets this weekend and go shopping and this, that, or the other, that's awesome, that's fun. Go do those things with not your emergency fund, with other funds, right? So an emergency fund is for the true emergencies, the things that actually gotta happen, right? Transmission breaks in the car that you need, right? Or, hey, we gotta make sure the dishwasher is running and it's not, or hey, it's 30 degrees outside and the heater just broke and we need to make sure that we fix it before it goes down to 10 degrees tonight. Those things are emergencies. Those things you got to have cash for. And that's really hard to get money for stuff like that. It's got to happen soon out of a 401k. We tell our participants a lot that 401ks are really bad places for short-term cash. Good for long-term cash, bad places for short-term cash. And the value of an emergency fund is it keeps you from having to do stupid stuff because you have to. You do wise stuff because you can, right? So what should an emergency fund do? Well, it should generally be around 3 to 6 months of your living expenses. That's a good rule of thumb. Your basic living expenses, not your Saks Fifth Avenue budget, but certainly your grocery budget, right? So 3 to 6 months worth of the expenses every month that you gotta have to keep life moving. And more on the 3 month side of that, if your income is more predictable, more stable, and more on the 6 month side of that, or even longer if your comfort zone requires it. If your income is seasonal or highly fluctuating or sales based, if you're only paid every so often. I had a client years ago that used to get paid once a year. Well, that's a lot of time between that client and the next paycheck. So if something goes sideways, he's got to have a lot of money because it's going to be a while before he gets any more money. Okay. And so the value of an emergency fund is it helps you not do crazy stuff or hard stuff or stupid stuff when you don't have to. Now, a lot of folks, especially the ones that are paying a lot of attention to their investments, are very involved and very, I don't want to say uptight about, but certainly concerned about rate of return. They want to make a good rate of return on their investments. And so they'll look at their cash in their bank and be like, the rate of return on that cash in the bank with low interest rates is not very impressive. And I'll give you that on paper, it's not very impressive. But think about this. Let's say your emergency fund saves you money from not having to pay a bunch of unnecessary taxes by pulling your 401k out too soon. Okay? Well, if it saved you from having to pay a 10% early distribution penalty on $10,000, well, your rate of return on that was $1,000 divided by whatever your emergency fund is or whatever that becomes a component of your rate of return, right? It's the opportunity cost that you avoid. All right. So as much as we're big fans of 401ks and putting money in the stock market and having a well-balanced portfolio, don't forget one of those components to a well-balanced portfolio is enough cash. All right. That's it for today. Thanks so much for joining us. If you can think of a topic that we should cover on these podcasts, please let us know. If you think of somebody that would benefit from this or other episodes, please share it with them. And other than that, that's all we've got for today. So thanks so much for joining us. See you on the next one.